What are the meta weapons for PvE when it comes to a day one raid race? That's the topic that we're covering in today's video. I'm going to give you a very easy, simplistic explanation of things. And on top of that easy explanation, I'll give you a more advanced meta loadout variations that you can come up with and things that you can plug into different loadouts that you're using depending upon what subclass, what character you're using. If you're using Stasis Warlock or whether you're using Void Hunter, you can vary your loadout quite a bit. And obviously we could go over builds, and this could be an exhaustive video that goes for an hour, but instead I want to make it nice and simple for you. And I'm going to go with my first loadout and my main loadout, my primary loadout that I think will be one I use for almost every encounter, or at least the loadout that I will start almost every encounter with, which is this right here. We have the Succession Sniper Rifle, we have the Sunshot Hand Cannon, and then we have the Apex Predator, 2 crafted weapons, and then the exotic hand cannon. With these 3 weapons, I have pretty much everything covered. I have good DPS with the Apex Predator, I have excellent ad clear with Sunshot, and then I can also snipe targets at distance like Shriekers, Ogres, Wizards, whatever it may be, I can snipe them. And so I kind of have a good coverage of everything with this loadout. This is my meta loadout. This is my prediction of what will be the strongest loadout going into the day one raid race. I highly recommend that you use a loadout comparable to this in some capacity. If you don't have the crafted Succession, there are obviously other options out there, and we're going to go through all those options right now because obviously not everyone has crafted every single good weapon or god roll weapon out there, and they may not be very prepared. But the nice part is that you don't have to have a crafted perfect roll of every weapon to do a day one raid race. There are so many different variations of weapons, and we're going to go through all of them and how you can use them in the day one raid race. So the first thing I wanted to mention was just that this is the go-to loadout for me, and I hope that you have something comparable to this. If you don't, let's go through everything else though. So alternatively, in the kinetic slot, we also have the conditional finality. This thing is just an absolute beast of a weapon in PvE. Obviously, you're able to freeze targets, explode them with ignitions. I highly recommend to have this on. You might want to put this on, especially during that first encounter with all the thralls coming after you. I can see a ton of utility there as well. On top of that, an ignition code with blinding and slide shot is always good. You can use other grenade launchers like auto loading and blinding. There are various other grenade launchers that do what this does. It's just the slide shot is really nice because you can just fire infinite blinding shots. It tends to be really well utilized in challenging content when ads and enemies are attacking you and they're so lethal, so potent that they can one-shot you. You oftentimes want to blind them. This is a strategy that we utilized back in the day when Grandmasters were super hard when they first came out, so I would recommend having something like that. The third weapon variant that you can have in your kinetic slot would be Touch of Malice. Now you might be thinking, when's the last time we actually used this? It got a massive buff. It's one of the best primary DPS weapons out there, and it has excellent range, and with its update you now can heal yourself pretty consistently with Unrelenting, and you can use various other sources like Devour, Sunspots, etc. Whenever I run out of ammo with my special and my power ammo, if I'm needing some DPS, this is what I'm going to swap to. This will effectively be like what we've used in the past with like Outbreak Perfected DPS and stuff like that. It does the same thing, it just does it a little bit better than Outbreak, so we're going to be having this on as a variant in case we need to do primary ammo DPS. The next weapon I should mention is the Heritage Slug Shotgun. Obviously this thing has been super consistent over the different raid races and different PvE encounters. I love this thing, use it all the time, and definitely if you're in a more close quarters area and you don't need a sniper, I will personally just swap to my Heritage over my Succession in that instance. And then another nice variant that you might have would be Izanagi's Burden. So for example, if you wanted a sniper for the distance but you don't have Succession, a lot of you probably have the exotic Izanagi's Burden. This thing is super powerful. Obviously it's been a very good weapon to use for a long time. Of course, if you miss your ×4 shot, then miss out on a ton of damage potential, so you got to be careful with that, which is why I tend to like using something like Succession more, because various different targets constantly shooting at me can make you flinch and make you miss a shot from time to time. And also I want to use my exotic slot on my Sunshot more than anything, so I'm going to be using Succession and Sunshot, but definitely there's a variant and a good option for using Izanagi's Burden. And then of course we have to go through Witherhoard. I don't think I really need to explain much here because I think everyone and their grandmother has used a Witherhoard in PvE before. You know how it works, you know how strong it is. Of course it's going to be on there as a variant, as an option to use from time to time. The next up is Arbalest. We have good inclination to believe there's going to be a ton of barrier champions in there, and if there aren't, there's even just a bunch of shielded champions. In that case, when there's barrier champions, you want to have Arbalest. This is the strongest anti-barrier weapon in the game, period. There's nothing else that can do it like Arbalest, or at least not do it as consistently without having to give up so much within your loadout. So Arbalest is always an excellent option, probably the best barrier option out there. Always so good, always so strong. Alternatively though, if you have an energy weapon that's especially special ammo weapon, then you probably don't want to use two special ammo weapons because you could run out of ammo, obviously, because of the new changes that Bungie made. We're not promoting as much double special these days. So alternatively, you could use Wish Ender for your anti-barrier, which is definitely a solid option as well, and you get that benefit of infinite ammo. However, keep in mind that, you have to draw all those arrows and enemies can swarm on you, so I wouldn't recommend a Wish Ender if there's an encounter where there's just endless hordes of enemies pushing you. You're going to need a little bit better crowd control, and Wish Ender is not entirely the right weapon for that, in my opinion. It's really good for ranged encounters when you can sit in the back and just pick off enemies, break barrier champions, etc. And then we have the Supremacy with rewind rounds and bait and switch. I still need to enhance my perks on this one, but this is a DPS sniper and extremely potent, very powerful. So you might need to use this from time to time when DPSing a boss. Now we go on to the energy slot, where of course picking Sunshot as our main weapon, our go-to choice. This thing is just so unbelievably powerful. Does 40% more damage to red bars. We have a good feeling, a good inclination that this is going to be a strong weapon going into the raid. If it's not, however, of course I'm going to have all these other weapons on the side to go through. Oh, actually what I needed to do was go through the other kinetic slot. Oh, before I go to Sunshot, actually, I need to do this. I forgot to mention this. So what I forgot to mention is that there's actually so many good kinetic weapons here as variants that I wanted to bring a few in here without making this list too ridiculously exhaustive. So let's go ahead and grab a few others that I do need to give notable mention to. One would be the Fatebringer, which will have explosive payload and frenzy. This thing is just super strong, a very good option for a kinetic primary weapon. Obviously you have Malfeasance, which I think will get disabled because of its bugged damage, so I highly doubt we're going to see Malfeasance in the mix here, but definitely an option. Lumina is an exotic hand cannon that buffs the damage of your teammates as well as does good damage itself because it's an exotic primary, so Lumina will definitely have some potential, especially if you're trying to crank up the DPS on a boss, because it does buff all your teammates' damage by 35%. And then we'll also have the Navigator here. If you're using Cenotaph Mask on your Warlock, they will very often be wanting to use the Navigator so that they can give Woven Mail to their teammates. 55% damage resistance is excellent survivability, and I think we'll see some potential with that. The last kinetic weapon I should mention as well will be the Riptide, which does have auto-loading chill clip, and you can do unstoppable for fusions, and it's just a good kinetic fusion overall, and it's had a lot of consistency throughout different challenging encounters. So do what you want with that. We don't have nearly as many energy weapons to go through, so I know that the kinetics are a bit exhaustive and there's quite a few, but those are all the ones that are definitely noteworthy. Now going on to the energy weapons, we have Sunshot, kinetic hand cannon, obviously very strong. It's benefited from the 75% increase to majors. It melts majors, 20% increase to red bars, plus it's an exotic primary, so it gets a 40% damage increase to red bars. This thing is amazing at ad clear right now. Definitely a good option to have on. Also, alternatively, Forbearance is an excellent option. Don't need to explain how strong the Forbearance is as a Waveframe GL. Everyone knows this thing is just an absolute beast. Most of you probably have 10,000 plus kills on your Forbearance because you know that this is easily like the best PvE weapon out there. However, keep in mind, if the ads are so dense and so strong that you can't one-hit kill them with it, you probably won't want to use this as much, so just be aware of that. Risk Runner is always an excellent option, especially if you've got thralls meleeing you. They do arc damage. I will proc the Risk Runner, gives you added survivability, and then you can just spray this weapon infinitely. It is an exotic primary, so it does that 40% more damage to red bars. Risk Runner definitely have some really strong utility. The Crota's End Day 1 Raid Race. Second Force is an excellent fusion rifle that you can craft from Last Wish. Has really good damage output with its rewind rounds and controlled burst roll here, so definitely be bringing that bad boy. Alternatively, if you're looking for a legendary hand cannon in the energy slot, Zali's Bane is the strongest one with double damage perks, explosive payload, and one for all. Those are both damage perks, which makes this way more potent than any other hand cannon out there. The only other comparable one is Fatebringer, which we put in the kinetic slot. Double damage perks is especially important when doing challenging content because you can fire your hand cannon one time less if the hand cannon is powerful enough to one-tap enemies or two-tap enemies, whereas other hand cannons take 3 shots perhaps. So Zali's Bane definitely a good option, and we'll go over another legendary hand cannon in just a moment. First, we need to go to first in, last out. Autoloading Vorpal Slug Shotgun. This thing has just been well utilized throughout various challenging encounters, and everyone's bringing this bad boy, and I imagine most people are sitting on this roll, have it sitting in their vault. Make sure to bust that bad boy out. Then we have Path of Least Resistance with Shoot to Loot One for All. We know that there's going to be a ton of added arc shields because Bungie said that they're shielding a ton of different enemies in the game. We know that Hive Knights have arc shields, so we're assuming that we should bring weapons that are arc, as just in case there's just like an absolutely absurd amount of arc shields. But if there's not, then of course we won't worry about it too much. But there's just an absolute absurd amount of arc shields everywhere, then we'll be rocking arc weapons to break all of those shields. Path of Least Resistance will be one of them. Alternatively, for arc shields, we have Nation of Beasts. Of course, I would prefer to use my Zali's Bane, but if everything has arc shields, then I'll have to put this bad boy on. We got Keep Away Explosive Payload on this, and this will be an excellent option in the energy slot for an arc primary ammo weapon, especially a legendary one, so that way you can slot your exotic slot somewhere else, kinetic or power slot. And another arc weapon here is the Adored. We got triple tap Vorpal. Not the best arc sniper overall. There's definitely definitely better out there. The Gambit Sniper is stronger, but this is just a really solid arc energy sniper. And again, if there's a bunch of shields out there that we need to break, we're gonna slap this bad boy on so that way we can break those shields at a distance. So I just threw this in here. I actually had to pull this one from collections because I haven't actually used this in quite a while, but realizing that the potential of all the arc shields, I wanted to make sure I had this. Moving on down to the power weapon slot, we have the Apex Predator. Of course, this is so strong with reconstruction, bait switch. Highly recommend everyone craft this bad boy. Can't speak highly enough about how strong and how potent this weapon is. Hopefully you've already crafted yours, but if you haven't, there's other options out there. Thunderlord is a good option, especially like we said with those arc shields. Thunderlord is going to be absolute beast. Great for ad clear. There's not going to be overload champions out there, but it will still be a really strong weapon overall for ad clear. And just Thunderlord just puts in work, and I would definitely recommend to have one on your character. You may not want to equip it at the beginning, but might as well have it out there. Next up, we have Tractor Cannon. Always a good option for debuffing targets. A minus 30% debuff to the targets that you hit with Tractor Cannon. Definitely a viable option. Lament is one of those ones. I don't know if we're necessarily going to need Lament, but every now and again we need Lament for certain bosses, certain encounters. It has its strengths. We'll see if I end up needing Lament. I think Lament's, I was a bit on the fence with that one, but Commemoration I'm definitely not on the fence of. I'm weapon level 142. This is probably my most used power weapon. This is just a beast at clearing ads, reconstruction, killing tally. Always bringing this into every encounter I ever do in the game. This thing is always a good workhorse, and it'll do good in this raid for sure. Moving to the next part, we have Cataclysmic. I doubt I'm gonna end up busting this out just because rocket DPS is so much more consistent and is actually much stronger than linear fusion DPS. So I feel like I probably won't use this, but just in case the boss has maybe like a crit multiplier or something, then you would use Cataclysmic instead of rockets. And then of course we're gonna have an eager edge sword, so that way we can swing around really fast. And then Gjallarhorn, it was recently nerfed with its Wolfpack rounds, but it still has proven to be strong and add some utility to rockets, so it's not entirely a bad thing to bring Gjallarhorn, and I'll still bring mine just in case. And then lastly, we have Sleeper Simulant here. Sleeper is just an all-around workhorse and definitely has some viability within these raid races. So I'll be bringing my Sleeper as well. I'll probably take a few of these weapons off here and there because I don't want to have too many weapons on as I clear the encounters and get my loot, but this is my overall loadout that I'm taking into the raid: Succession, Sunshot, Apex Predator. And of course, based on the encounter, based on the enemies, I will swap out to a few different variants of each weapon to better suit the encounter based on the range, the distance, the DPS strategies that we're trying to utilize. There's obviously a lot of different ones out there, and I'm going to be bringing you some videos going over those DPS strategies. I'm going to go over the 4 best Titan loadouts, Warlock loadouts, Hunter loadouts, and builds of all 3 characters that you're going to want to have if I can crank all those videos out in time, because obviously there's a bit of a time crunch. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel with notifications on if you want that content as well. Smash the like button and click on the screen here to watch another video from the channel. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Later.